Hey everyone. So I've been doing a video series where I'm introducing players to different types of role-playing games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons. Because Dungeons and Dragons kind of has a monopoly on things. Which Dungeons and Dragons isn't bad, but there's other systems worth trying out. In my Pathfinder 2nd Edition video for this series, somebody left a comment that I should have spent more time talking about how combat is different in Pathfinder than Dungeons and Dragons. And that was a seriously good point. I should have done that. I didn't, but so I'm going to make a separate video here talking about why I do think that Pathfinder 2nd Edition's combat feels better than 5e's. Not that I'm saying 5e's is like bad, but I just don't think it's as good. I think Pathfinder 2e has more options in combat, which makes things more interesting, and it sort of rewards players' creativity for taking different abilities or choosing different types of actions rather than being, I move, I hit, I move, I hit, I move, yeah. It's less repetitive that way, I think. So starting off with what you do in Dungeons and Dragons, and this is going to be pretty quick because if you play Dungeons and Dragons and watch this video, you already know this, right? You can move, you get your action, you get a bonus action if you have one, and then your reaction. The problem I have here is that there's not a lot of options. Like, your biggest options are just with your one action and then maybe your bonus action. But that's very dependent on like what class you're playing, and I'm going to try to stay away from classes too much, because Pathfinder has like double the number of classes that Dungeons and Dragons has now, and this video would be way too long if I went into all of those things. So, one thing I will give is that everybody has opportunity attacks in 5e, which means everybody has something to do with their reaction. Pathfinder 2 has an equivalent, instead of opportunity attacks, it's called reactive strike, but it's different because the idea is that in order to see those like weaknesses in combat, you have to be a trained combatant to see and take advantage of them, which means only like fighters are the only class that by default get their attack of opportunity. Now, most martial classes can spend a feat to get it or something similar to it, but if you're a caster, you don't get access to this and you're probably not going to. There are other reactions you can take, but you could also level a character all the way to level 20 and not have a reaction, which just kind of sucks. So I am going to give a point to 5e for making attacks of opportunity available to everyone. It just as a note, I would not homebrew that Pathfinder give attacks of opportunity to everyone because it's just a different system. But the way Pathfinder 2e works is that every player gets, generally, 3 actions and a reaction. Now, there are spells or class abilities, feats, whatever, that modify this, so you might be able to, like, if you're hasted, you can spend an extra action, but you can only spend the action to move or strike, right? But we're going to kind of ignore those things for now. So one of the main differences is that movement in Pathfinder is an action. If you just want to run away, your character can spend all 3 of their actions running away, if that's what you choose to do. That's not going to probably be handy very often, but Pathfinder does treat movement differently based on if you're taking a stride action, which is your normal movement, versus like if you're flying. Like, there are some specifics which I don't like, but the 2 main actions you're going to take for movement are stride, which if you've got a 25 movement speed, your character moves 25 feet in a direction or whatever, and step. The reason step is important is that step only moves your character 5 feet, which is not very good, but it doesn't provoke that attack of opportunity. That means your character can sort of disengage without just losing their entire turn. So if you're a wizard and a fighter gets in your face and you're like, I think this fighter is going to stab me if I try to move away or cast a spell, your character can say, I spend 1 action to step, and then you've still got 2 actions left to do other things in combat, giving you more choices. This also means that certain characters' builds, like, I had one character who had a reaction and used a spear, which gave them extra reach, was so disgusting in combat. But that's how they chose to build their character for that bonus, and, you know, weapons do very different things in Pathfinder 2e, but that's a separate video. So speaking of casting spells, casting a spell is typically multiple actions. It's almost always 2 actions to cast a spell, which means your default like rotation as a caster is going to be move and cast a spell, or you could cast a spell and then take like a hide action or do something else. but most spells are going to be 2 of your 3 actions. Some spells are a reaction, some spells might be 3 actions. The only like really notable example that's going to come up a lot is the heal and harm spells. And if you're familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, you have an idea of what I mean by heal and harm. These spells do different things based on how much you sort of charge them, right? So just speaking in terms of heal, because harm is just the opposite. If you spend 1 action, you can heal somebody by just touching them, someone nearby. You can spend 2 actions to make your heal ranged and heal a little bit more, or you can spend 3 actions to have an AoE heal. This sort of means that even if you're playing a very like heal-focused character, this still gives you more options because it's how much time do you want to spend charging your heal, or how many turns can you stand to spend. I'm not saying that very well, am I? No. If you're like feeling pressured, you might be like, I need to spend 2 actions to move. I can only spend 1 action healing. Or if you're like, I know I'm in threatening, but my party's in a bad position, I'm going to spend all 3 actions to heal, and that is my entire turn. That's valid. But I like that the spells give you different choices based on how much time you're going to spend casting them. But this isn't just for spellcasters. Marshals can get different types of actions, mostly from like class feats that will do different things for them. So your marshal can just say, I stab a dude with a sword. Or you can take a feat to stab a different way and apply different effects, or to stab harder. Something like the power attack, which has been a staple of Dungeons & Dragons for a long time, is literally just, I spend additional actions to hit harder. So certain things that can happen are things like sudden charge is a feat I took once on a barbarian type character. The sudden charge is 2 actions, but it allows you to stride twice and then attack if you finish your turn next to someone. So that kind of gives you, like, for 2 actions, I get to do 3 things, which is why feats like that are really good. A Monk's Flurry of Blows, for instance, says for 1 action, I get to make 2 attacks. That's why it's really good. And that's how they handle Flurry of Blows in Pathfinder 2e. And there's other things too. It's not just about dealing more damage. Debilitating Shot is a feat that fighters can take, and you're going to almost usually take this if you're playing like an archer type fighter or a ranged. And it pretty much says for 2 actions, you get to attack, which fighters want to deal damage. But if you hit the enemy, you also slow them, which means the slow effect is just you get 1 less turn, 1 less action on your turn. So now you can take a feat to say, well, not only am I hitting hard with my bow, but I'm also a debilitator. Which means you're getting to kind of help your casters out, which are usually the people that have to spend their action to debilitate. Yeah, class feats are just massive in Pathfinder 2e, and I can't talk anymore because it's been too much time on it. And finally, I want to talk about the multiple attack penalty. This is one of the reasons I said at the beginning of the video that you have to be creative with how you use your actions in Pathfinder. Because there really is nothing to stop a fighter from saying, I attack 3 times. Which you can. The way Pathfinder kind of dissuades you from doing that is by giving you a multiple attack penalty. Which if you played like Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, you really know what I'm talking about here. When the first time you make an attack in a round, you just roll, you add your stuff, and it's normal. You say, I'm going to attack a second time. It's like, okay, you roll everything, but you're taking a -5 for being your second attack. And if you say, I attack a 3rd time in a round, you're taking a -10. Now, this doesn't mean you can't hit. The way math works in Pathfinder is that your first action is always very likely to hit. Your second attack might hit, depending on a good roll. And then your 3rd attack is almost certainly to miss. But you could always just crit fish. Like, 20s happen, and yeah. Ways around this is that you can use a weapon with the agile trait on it, which like a dagger would have. A dagger, or the agile weapon, says instead of taking a -5 and then -10, you take a -4 and then a -8. Which I would argue is still not very good, but if you want to attack multiple times, it helps. Similarly, you could take different actions in combat other than just, I hit this guy. And I think there's almost a noob trap we talk about, like on the Reddit, where it's almost a noob trap to attack 3 times in a turn, even though sometimes you just don't have much else to do. But Pathfinder 2 gives you way more options of what you can do with your actions other than attack, cast spells, and move, which I think 5e is very restricted to. So a few examples of what you might do with your third action are going to be things like raise a shield, because your character might wear a shield, but if they're not spending time and concentration actually blocking, it doesn't do anything. Also, shields in Pathfinder are so much better than they are in 5e, because raising the shield grants you a bonus to your AC, but you can spend a reaction if you get hit to reduce the damage based on how the hardness value of your shield. So you're not only harder to hit, but you take less damage for using your shield. You could take an action called Recall Knowledge, which is pretty much your character trying to figure something out or remember a story or their studies. This can be things like if an enemy uses a spell, in Pathfinder, you don't automatically know what spell you're being hit with. Now, if the enemy just throws a red ball and it explodes in your face, you can kind of guess it's Fireball, and I wouldn't penalize a player for ever doing that. But Pathfinder has so many spells in it. I played the game for a long time. I can't remember all of them. It's too many. But you could just say, my character is trained in Arcana. They're really good at magic. I'm going to spend one action to try to figure out what this opponent just did to me, and you can figure out how to play around it. Similarly, you could use Battle Medicine. If you see my video way back, I made a tier list of the different skills for Pathfinder 2. Medicine is the best or about the best skill in the game. Battle Medicine just says it's a way in combat for you to like bandage up your ally and to recover hit points other than casting a spell or using consumable potions. Medicine is crazy. Every character should have somebody trained in medicine. Your character could take cover, getting a bonus to their AC, sort of like they're raising a shield. Your character can hide as a sort of like stealth action. And then you can do your combat maneuvers with athletics, which is why athletics is such a good skill. Things like shoving your opponent away, so that they have to spend an extra action on their turn to step up to you again. Grappling. If you're your fighter type character and you're facing a wizard, it's like, yeah, you can hit him with your sword, or you can grab him so he can't escape you and your allies. It's harder for him to cast spells. You might have additional... If you take the Wrestler dedication, there's so many things you can do with grappling. Grappling is really good. Or just trip your opponent. It's another just, you have to spend an action to stand up. Oh, I have attack of opportunity or reactive strike. I stab you as you're standing up. There's so many different options you can take. This is why I do like Pathfinder 2e's combat better than 5e's. It feels less repetitive, especially for martial characters, which has been a long-standing issue with Dungeons & Dragons for martial characters, except for 4th edition, which we're not going to talk about 4th edition. But yeah, I just like the number of options and sort of the rewarding your creativity. Building a martial character that can do things other than just stab your opponent is rewarded because of the systems in place. And I think that makes your characters a lot more interesting when you're saying, I'm a fighter, but I'm also like, I am also studied in natural magics, so I can identify like fae and plants and different stuff. Or it's something else to do for your rogue to say, I take an action to hide, and then I've still got 2 actions to do whatever I want with, and that provokes your attack, or not attack of opportunity, sorry, the precision damage from being a rogue. There's just a lot of things you can do, and I love the options that come with Pathfinder 2e. If I forgot anything, leave a comment, because there's so many other options. Like if I forgot something and you're like, this is the best action in the world, and you're bad for remembering it, like, write it down and maybe I'll tell you you're right, because I made this video sort of on the fly while I'm panicking about the US election right now. Yeah, we're not going to talk about the US election. Regardless, thanks for being here. Do the YouTube stuff, like the video, follow if you watch this. I don't know. I'm doing lots of tabletop stuff right now. I'm having a lot of fun with creating videos, so I'm going to keep doing it whether you like it or not. But I would like the likes. So, yeah. Thanks. I'll see you later. Bye.